At my sister's birthday party, my dad slapped me. Not because I ruined anything, not because I raised my voice. He slapped me across the face, in front of everyone, because I wouldn't hand over the deed to my 599K condo. The music kept playing. The cake hadn't even been cut. And yet, somehow, I had become the villain for saying one word. No. They called me selfish. Said I didn't care about family. Said I was ruining Tiffany's special day. But none of them knew the truth. What I'd sacrificed. What I had already given. And what I was about to take back. See, when someone draws blood in public, just to humiliate you into submission, you don't just walk away. You make sure the next door they try to walk through is no longer theirs. And that's exactly what I did. Tiffany's birthday parties had always been grand. When she turned 10, they hired a pony. At 16, a DJ and a chocolate fountain. This year, she turned 25. And the backyard had been transformed into a luxury garden gala. Hanging lights shimmered above manicured hedges. A string quartet played something classical. And servers in white gloves handed out mini lobster rolls. I arrived in a navy dress I'd worn to 2 previous work events. Nothing fancy, just clean and sharp. Tiffany's friends, though, sparkled like they'd just stepped out of a bridal catalog. And maybe that was the point. She was newly engaged, and this birthday was practically a second engagement party. Mom greeted me with air kisses. She glanced down at the gift I brought, a hand-carved cookbook stand with her initials. "Oh, how thoughtful," she said, like she hadn't expected much anyway. Then she moved on to hug Tiffany again. "Look at our birthday girl," Mom announced loudly to a cluster of aunts. "Tiffany's just glowing, isn't she? A homeowner soon, a wife-to-be. We couldn't be prouder." I stood a few steps back, clutching my gift like a substitute for belonging. My name wasn't on the welcome sign. The seating chart listed me as family, Savannah, in parentheses, while Tiffany got gold-foiled cursive with hearts. When I found my seat, it was next to the catering tent, right by where trays came in and out. From there, I had a perfect view of everyone else being celebrated. Tiffany wore a blush pink silk dress with a diamond necklace I'd never seen before. Dad gave a toast about the light of our lives. And when Tiffany stood to hug him, he whispered something in her ear that made her beam. I looked away. No one asked where I'd been. No one mentioned the raise I got last quarter. No one noticed I left the clinic early to be here at all. And yet I smiled. I always smiled. It was the only way to avoid the label I hated most. Bitter. So I sat. Sipped my drink. Watched my little sister be crowned again and again. And wondered if anyone remembered that I was the one who helped co-sign her first student loan. But in this house, memory was selective. And love came with conditions. Dinner had just been served. Rosemary chicken, wild rice, something with truffle oil. I was halfway through my second bite when Mom rose from her seat, glass of champagne in hand. She tapped it gently with her ring and smiled toward the crowd. "I just want to say how grateful we are to be surrounded by so much love tonight," she began, "and to celebrate a daughter who brings light wherever she goes." Polite applause followed. Tiffany dipped her head sweetly, as if she didn't already expect the attention. Mom continued, "You know, Tiffany has so much ahead of her. A wedding, a new chapter, and wouldn't it be just perfect?" Her eyes turned directly to me. "If someone in this family helped her start that journey with a home?" My fork froze midair. "Savannah," she said brightly, still smiling like this was a toast, not a trap. "You have that gorgeous condo in Westgate. You're always traveling for work? And it's just the two of you, right? That extra bedroom hardly gets used." The room shifted. Chairs creaked. Someone cleared their throat across the table. "Wouldn't it be the perfect gift?" Mom pressed on. "If you passed it along to your sister? For her wedding?" I blinked. The words took a moment to land. Even Tiffany looked caught off guard for half a second, then recovered with a soft, knowing grin. I glanced at Dad. He raised his glass without hesitation. It's just logical, Savannah. She's about to start a family. You've had your time. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was engineered. Designed to corner me into either a performance of generosity or a public branding of selfishness. I stood slowly, voice calm. I wasn't told this would be part of the celebration. A few guests looked down. One woman muttered, "Yikes." Mom laughed. Light and airy like this was a sitcom. "Oh, sweetie, don't be dramatic. It's not a demand, just a gesture, a symbol of love." Dad added, "You always talk about wanting peace, right? Well, peace means putting the family first." I felt heat rise in my neck. I looked at Tiffany. She didn't say anything, just tilted her head slightly, like she was waiting to see if I'd fold. I smiled politely. "I'm sorry," I said, turning to the room. "But I wasn't asked. I was presented. And there's a difference." Then I sat down. Back straight, eyes forward. The silence that followed wasn't kind. It was sharp. But I didn't flinch. I hadn't even finished my sentence when Dad stood up from his chair. Not fast, but deliberate. The room had gone quiet. I thought maybe he was coming to pull me aside, to talk sense into me, like he always phrased it. Instead, he walked straight toward me. His jaw clenched so tightly his cheek twitched. "Savannah," he said low, but loud enough for the table to hear. "You're embarrassing yourself." I didn't reply. I just looked up at him, calm but firm. That's when it happened. His hand came down hard. A sharp crack echoed across the patio. I didn't fall, but the sting bloomed across my cheek like fire. A few guests gasped. Someone dropped a glass. I heard a phone click. Someone had started recording. I tasted blood at the edge of my lip. For a moment, no one moved. Even the violinists froze mid-song. Mom didn't run to stop him. She just stood there, expression unreadable, a hand lightly resting on Tiffany's shoulder. "She deserved that," she muttered to no one and everyone. Tiffany didn't speak. She didn't reach out. She just looked away. I swallowed hard and wiped the corner of my mouth. "I'm going home," I said quietly. "You are selfish," Dad snapped. "We gave you everything. And this is how you repay us? On your sister's day?" I didn't answer. I stepped away. Heels steady on flagstone. Hands trembling only slightly. A friend of Tiffany's reached for her phone. "Did you get that?" I heard someone whisper. "I think she's bleeding." But no one stopped me. No one walked with me to the gate. Not even Tiffany. My car was parked a block away. I walked in silence. The spring night, suddenly cold on my skin. As I reached the sidewalk, a woman I barely knew, some distant cousin, I think, rushed up to me. "Savannah," she said, breathless. "Are you okay? Do you want me to call someone?" I shook my head. "No need," I said. "I'll handle it." And I would. Not with shouting. Not with begging. But with everything they never expected. The kind of silence that doesn't retreat. It builds. The Uber driver barely said a word. He glanced at me in the mirror once, eyes flickering to the fading red mark on my cheek. But he didn't ask. I was grateful for that. The car ride felt longer than it was. Streetlights streaked across the windows, casting thin white lines across my lap, like scars trying to form. When we stopped in front of Leah's apartment, I thanked him softly and stepped out. The building looked the same, modest, brick, warm light from the stairwell. But tonight, everything felt foreign. Leah had left the porch light on. She wasn't home, still out of town visiting her fiancé's family. But she'd texted me the code to get in. Just in case, she'd written last week. I never thought I'd use it like this. Inside, the living room smelled faintly of cinnamon and fabric softener. There was a folded blanket on the couch, and a half-full mug on the coffee table, her usual chamomile, abandoned mid-sip. I sank into the couch without removing my shoes. The room was quiet, but not peaceful. I touched my cheek gently. Still warm, still tingling. Not from pain, from the memory of being reduced. From the sound that hand made. From the lack of a single person saying, "That's enough." My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. "Next time, keep your drama to yourself. You embarrassed your sister." I stared at it, then powered off my phone. No reply was ever going to be enough for them. No boundary would ever be respected. Unless it came with walls they couldn't climb. I got up slowly, walked to the guest room. Leah had left a towel on the bed, and one of her oversized t-shirts folded neatly on the pillow. I didn't touch any of it. I just lay down, still in my dress, staring at the ceiling. The silence wrapped around me like a second skin. I wasn't crying. That surprised me. No sobs, no breakdown. Just stillness. Because this wasn't just a bad night. It was the final pattern completing itself. They didn't want me to love them. They wanted me to obey them. And tonight, I had said no. I didn't know yet what I would do next. But I knew I would never walk back into that house as the daughter they thought they owned. Something had shifted. Permanently. And silence, I realized, isn't always surrender. Sometimes, it's the sound of a storm deciding where to land. The next morning, I woke to the scent of Leah's couch, lavender detergent, and old Netflix marathons. For a second, I forgot why I was there. Then I sat up, and the ache in my jaw reminded me. I walked to the bathroom, turned on the light. The mirror didn't lie. My cheek had a faint yellow hue blooming under the skin, a shadow of last night's slap. I splashed cold water on my face, trying to ground myself. And then my phone now back on buzzed. Unknown number. "Hi Savannah. This is Jeanette from Oak, Elm Realty. Just confirming your 3 p.m. showing today at the Westgate condo. Do you prefer we use the key from the lockbox?" I stared at the message. My mouth went dry. What showing? I hadn't listed my condo. I hadn't authorized anything. And I certainly hadn't installed a lockbox. I called back immediately. "Hi," I said sharply. "I didn't schedule a showing." There was a pause. "Oh," Jeanette replied, caught off guard. "It's under your name, yes. But the co-signer is an Orville Blake? He said you'd both agreed." I cut her off. "I did not authorize any access. Cancel it. Immediately." My heart thudded as I hung up. The name. Orville Blake. My father. He had used his name as a co-signer, likely with forged or misleading documents. My mind raced. When had they gotten access? Then I remembered last week, after dinner, Dad had mistakenly taken my purse. He handed it back 10 minutes later, with a laugh. I didn't think anything of it. Until now. I opened my bag. My spare condo key, the one I always clipped to the inside pocket, was gone. A cold weight settled in my chest. This wasn't just a slap anymore. This wasn't humiliation. This was theft. And it was happening in real time. I called Mariah Stein, my former real estate attorney. She didn't pick up. So I sent a short email. Subject: urgent. Property breach. "Hi Mariah. I believe my parents are trying to access and sell my condo without consent. They have a key I didn't authorize. Can we meet today?" I hit send, then grabbed my coat. By 11:30 a.m., I was standing outside my condo in Westgate, with a locksmith. He bent down, examining the handle. "Someone's been trying this recently," he said. "Scratches are fresh, like they didn't quite know how the key slides." I exhaled slowly. "I need the locks changed, and add a deadbolt." He nodded and got to work. As he drilled into the wood, I stood there, arms crossed, heart steadying. I wasn't just going to stop them. I was going to take back more than a key. I was going to take back control. By noon, I was back at Leah's apartment, pacing the living room with my phone pressed to my ear. Mariah finally called back. "I've reviewed the paperwork you sent," she said. "First off, I'm sorry. This isn't just unethical what they attempted borders on fraud." I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. I figured. "But here's the interesting part," she continued. "I pulled your old property records from when you refinanced the Westgate condo 5 years ago. And I also looked at the title history of your parents' home." I frowned. "Why?" "Because that house," she said, "the one they're living in? You still own it." I froze. "No, I signed that over years ago back when I helped them avoid foreclosure." "You never finalized the transfer," she clarified. "They never filed the deed change. Technically, it's still under your name." I sat down slowly. 1,000 conversations and guilt trips flooded my mind. Dad thanking me for saving their dignity. Mom saying, "We'll handle the paperwork. You just worry about your career." All smoke. No mirrors. Just deception. "They've been living in my house for 7 years, I said, stunned. "On paper, yes," Mariah replied. "And now they tried to steal your second one." Silence hung between us. Then she asked gently, "Savannah, what do you want to do?" My answer came out quietly, but firmly. "I want them out." "Then we file an eviction, legally, no warnings, no family dinners, just court." We submitted the paperwork that same day. No dramatic phone calls. No confrontations. Just one cold signature and a delivery notice. 3 days later, it arrived at their door. I didn't see it happen in person, but my cousin Ella sent me a video. It was grainy, shot from across the street, but clear enough to make out the moment. My father still in his robe, toast in one hand opening the door. The sheriff stood there, calm and professional, handing over a sealed envelope. My mother peered over his shoulder, mid-sip from a teacup. Then, pause. She froze. He opened the letter, eyes narrowing. And then, he slammed the paper against the doorframe. Yelled something the audio didn't catch. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Panic, confusion, rage, all packed into 10 seconds of footage. They had no idea I still held the deed. No idea I had filed the notice. But now, it was official. They had 30 days to vacate. That night, I sat in my Westgate condo, lights off, curtains half drawn. The silence wasn't sharp like before. It was soft, solid. My phone buzzed. It was Tiffany. "You didn't have to do this," her message read. "You just burned the whole family down." I didn't reply. Then, 10 minutes later, another message, this time from Dad. "You think you've won? You're a disgrace. You'll regret this." I stared at it. Then opened my Dropbox folderone I'd named simply, Proof. Inside, copies of every wire transfer I'd ever sent them. The original condo deed. Screenshots of the realtor messages. Audio clips from Mom, asking if I could just pay the mortgage this one last time. I didn't share it publicly. Not yet. I didn't need to. Because for once, I wasn't acting from rage. I wasn't trying to make them hurt. I was simply done. Done playing the daughter. Done begging to belong. Done sacrificing peace for their approval. Let them spin their version of the story. Let them rant in group chats, throw pity parties, post on Facebook. I didn't need to shout. I had the paperwork. I had the truth. And for the first time in my life, I had the power. The video went live at 10:17 a.m. sharp. I hadn't followed any of them on social media for years, but Leah sent it to me with a simple text. "You need to see this." It opened with a close-up of my dad's face, somber and staged. Then it cut to a clip blurry, cropped from Tiffany's party. Me at the mic, my voice cracking as I said, "This wasn't agreed on." No context. No mention of the ambush. No footage of the slap. The screen faded to black, then white letters appeared. "We raised her with love." We never expected betrayal. Below the post. Family first. Ungrateful. Broken hearts. I didn't click the comments, but I didn't have to. The preview told me everything. Some kids are just selfish. She probably sold their house out of spite. We don't know the whole story, but this? Wow. They weren't just rewriting the past. They were constructing a narrative where I was the villain. And it was spreading. Even my Aunt Joni shared the post with a caption, "So heartbreaking when family turns on you." I stared at the screen, pulse steady. I should have been shaking, but I wasn't. I opened Dropbox, created a public folder, named it simply, "If You Care to Know the Truth." Inside, I uploaded the original deed to the condo, in my name. The title history showing I still owned the family house. Screenshots of the unauthorized realtor appointment. Email from mom asking for help with bills, just this once. Bank transfers with dates and amounts every loan I'd ever given. A scanned copy of the forged cosigner form with dad's name. No captions. No emotional rants. No hashtags. Just facts. Then, I shared the link in one place. A quiet, untagged post on my personal page. I don't expect to change your minds. I only care that the truth exists somewhere. That's enough for me. I logged off. Closed the laptop. Made tea. I didn't need applause. I didn't even need vindication. I just needed space to breathe again. That night, I sat at my dining table with Leah and her fiancé. We ate in near silence. Until Leah said, "You did it, you know." "Did what?" I asked. "You cut the rope. The one they kept pulling every time you tried to move forward." I nodded slowly. But it wasn't pride I felt. It was stillness. The kind that comes when you've finally stopped running. 2 days later, a message arrived in my inbox. The name made me pause. Uncle Warren. Mom's oldest brother. The one who hadn't spoken to our side of the family in a decade. His message read, "Saw the folder. About time someone told the truth. If you need a witness, I'm here. I saw what your father did to your inheritance. I saw what he did to your mother too." I stared at it for a long time. Not because I doubted it, but because for the first time in years, someone outside the echo chamber had seen me clearly. Later that evening, I took down the Dropbox link. Not because I was afraid, but because it had done its job. The people who needed to see it had seen it. The rest? They'd already chosen their version. And I no longer needed to convince anyone of mine. I folded the laptop shut, put on my coat, and stepped outside. The air was crisp, my breath visible. No one was watching. No one was clapping. But I was standing, unapologetically. And for the first time in my life, I didn't owe a single explanation to anyone. 3 weeks later, I returned to the house. Not as a daughter. Not to reconcile. Just to collect what was legally mine. And decide what would stay and what would go. The movers were already there, wheeling out dusty boxes of old cookware, bags of mismatched holiday decorations, and the framed "Family is Everything" sign that used to hang in the hallway. The place was stripped bare. No laughter. No casseroles in the oven. Just cold echoes and faint dust prints on the walls where photos used to hang. I moved slowly through the space, pausing at the kitchen island where Mom once braided Tiffany's hair, at the chip tile in the hallway Dad never fixed. Each spot a ghost. Each memory a breadcrumb that led me somewhere I no longer needed to follow. Then I saw it. In the cabinet under the stairs, the one no one ever used, tucked behind a box of tangled extension cords, sat a single item. A linen napkin, folded in the shape of a swan. I recognized it immediately. I'd folded it myself. At Tiffany's birthday party. Right before the moment everything shattered. It was slightly wrinkled now, the crease soft. But it was unmistakably mine. Someone had kept it. Not to honor me. Probably not even consciously. Maybe it had just been swept into a drawer and forgotten. But somehow, it survived. I held it in my hands for a long moment, and for the first time, I didn't feel erased. I wasn't proof in someone else's photo album. I didn't need to be remembered to exist. I was here. And I still am. I tucked the swan napkin into my bag. It was the only thing I took from the house that day. That evening, back in my condo, I placed it in the center of my dining table. Not for show. Not as a trophy. But as a quiet reminder. They tried to take everything. They called me selfish, unloving, disloyal. But in trying to erase me, they gave me back the one thing I'd been denying myself for years. Freedom. Weeks passed. Then, one afternoon, an envelope arrived. Handwritten. No return address. Inside, a baby shower invitation. At the bottom, in slanted cursive, Tiffany had written, "I didn't know how far they went. You deserved better. I'm sorry." I stared at it for a while. I didn't cry. I didn't respond. Some wounds don't need to be reopened. Some bridges don't need fire. Just silence. I wrote a small check to the local women's shelter. On the memo line, I wrote, "In honor of starting over." Then I cooked dinner. Set the table for two. And when Leah arrived with a bottle of wine and a tiny orchid in hand, I knew. This was my home. Built not on inheritance, but on intention.